And I've taken these questions from the issue itself because they just jumped out at me when I was reading it. There's an opening essay by the Brazilian literary critic Roberto Schwartz, who says that the idea of literature and the idea of national in Brazil are in the process of disappearing. I thought that was an extraordinary way to begin a journal about Brazilian literature, the idea that it's already disappearing. So Alípio, I wondered if you could perhaps discuss this with the audience, try and take us, what do you think Roberto Schwartz means by this? Or is this right? Is it really disappearing?
I don't know exactly the context in which this phrase is inserted. Can you repeat the second part?
What is the idea of national is disappearing and the idea of literature is disappearing in Brazil?
If the idea of national is disappearing from a point of view, it's because of internet.
Yes.
That is making the world a little town.
Yes, yes.
This is a problem, or not a problem everywhere.
Yeah.
In the case of literature,
yes.
the idea, from my point of view, the biggest problem is that now literature is risking becoming an object of study in university.
Right.
Not exactly a treasure for everybody. Roberto Schwartz himself is used to saying that literature now is in the hands of the academics.
Right.
I'm an academic, but I think it's not good for literature.
So do you mean that literature is being produced by academics as well?
Lots of academics. Of course, there are lots of very good writers, very good poets, but sometimes I have the impression that there are lots of people writing for crazy academic critics.
Okay, so they want the kind of the approval of academia.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a matter of reputation.
Right.
The theme of a festival in Norwich I'm going to participate in.
Right.
Very, very good for our content.
Okay, reputation?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, there's another essay that I thought was brilliant by Leandro Passini. Can I just check you can all hear me? No, okay. Leandro, maybe I'll take the mic. In another essay by Leandro Passini, a professor of Brazilian literature in São Paulo, he plots a fascinating article in his piece across history and reminds us that when Brazil gained independence in 1822, that it maintained the colonial mode of production, including slave labour. Passini in his piece concludes with the view that one of the problems in Brazilian literary life today is that each new generation of writers forgets its predecessors. So I wanted to ask Marília and Alípio, you two, both as writers, I mean, this is quite a charge that you guys are forgetting your predecessors. Is there any truth to that, do you think? Would you like to?
Difficult question. But I swear that I try to remember all my predecessors every single day.
Who might be the top two?
You mean poets, novelists?
Up to you.
Oh, I love Carlos Drummond de Andrade, Manuel Bandeira, Murilo Mendes.
Many.
Yeah, Machado de Assis. Also.
Okay. Marília.
I think we have a relation with the past and the predecessors today that are like contemporaries. I don't know. I read them like contemporaries. I try to bring them to now. I don't think I am forgetting them, but I think it's also it depends on the moment you are living. Sometimes literature is like a stock market. I remember the case of Paulo Leminski. It's a poet from the 70s that was out of print since then. And now they had published a book, a collection with his poems, and it sold out 8,000 books in a few months. So it was the moment that the moment was asking for something like that, and he came. And today we all are reading him like a contemporary. So.
Can I just sort of try and establish, though, whether it's partly that possibly there's a charge that in contemporary Brazil, some writers are forgetting the history, the sort of history of colonialism, the history of slavery. Would that be true, or is that pushing it too far?
Maybe that history, yes. I think the modernists are much more present now than the other writers, and also the history.
You mean the modernists? Yeah. It's curious, because perhaps because of the influence of modernist departments at universities.
For an academic, you seem quite down on university. Maybe you can speak about them here, and not many of them will find out. I'm going to move on to question 3, because at the heart of this special issue is the art of translation. There's a wonderful piece by one of Brazil's most prolific translators, Caetano, Valbrigues, would that be correct? Valbrigues, Galindo. It's a very provocative piece of writing. He's worked on Thomas Pynchon, David Foster Wallace, James Joyce, and our Bailey's Prize and every prize winner, it seems to be, Ali Smith. Galindo begins his piece with a tale. He was at a symposium listening to the British translator Nick Caister speak about his experiences translating Spanish and Spanish and Brazilian fiction into English. And apparently he gets paid per word, whereas Brazilian translators get paid per character on the page. And Galindo, the author of this article, calculated that means that British translators translating Brazilian fiction and poetry into English get paid about 3 times more than their Brazilian colleagues, which seems to raise many questions, certainly around possibly status, but also how writers survive. Lucy, I mean, you're early on in your career. Does this ring true? Are you able to talk a bit about the sort of finances of translation?
Yeah, I suppose I can start by saying that that difference between getting paid per word or per 1,000 words, which I generally calculate it here in the UK, versus per character, is an absolute nightmare when anyone asks you to quote for a job per character, because I've got no idea. It means nothing to me, so there's a lot of maths has to go on. To try it. So I'm not quite sure how Caetano managed to come up with that, because I know I could never do it. And yeah, here in the UK we have the Translators Association, which I suppose is our union for literary translators, and they have, it's not a recommended rate because they're not allowed to call it that, but it's, I think the wording is, this is the rate that we observe most UK publishers are willing to pay, which is a very roundabout way of putting that it's a recommended rate, which at the moment is £90 per 1,000 words. So that's our sort of benchmark that we aim to get publishers to pay us, or more if possible. And that's not always the case. There's always a lot of negotiation that has to go on. And yeah, it's often a struggle, but that's what we go for.
I mean, there's another sort of aspect of this, which is Galindo also says that translators from Britain and the US have a different social and editorial role. He says that you guys act as literary scouts who sell the idea of a book to publishers and promote authors from places that the translator thinks deserves attention. Galindo says that people like Nick Caister and yourself and others, I know you've got Zoe Perry in the audience who's kind of doing very well as a young translator. He says that people like you are the soldiers who are spreading the word for minority languages, whereas the Brazilian translators are merely workers who are reinforcing the status quo. because they are translating sort of what globally mainstream literature into Portuguese. So I'd be quite interested to hear all of your opinions on this, but maybe we could start with you, Lucy. Are you a scout or a soldier?
I think it's very, very true to say that we do act as scouts for literature from the languages we translate from here in the UK. Whether editors listen to us is a different matter, but that's part of our job is very much unpaid literary scouts,
right.
Trying to bring books that we're really passionate about to the attention of editors. I personally am uncomfortable with the idea of being a soldier, partly because I've got a Quaker upbringing and it's very odd to describe myself as a literary soldier. I can sort of see where that image comes from.
Okay. And Alípio, you do a lot of translating. I mean, do you buy the idea that you're a worker reinforcing the status quo?
I don't think, I don't agree exactly with Galindo, because sometimes you can find editors, publishers open to suggestions. For example, I've suggested lots of books to be translated. I don't identify with these denominations, soldiers, and
right. But I mean, as someone who you translate, I think you translated 80 poems by Larkin. I mean, and Larkin to me seems, I mean, it's extraordinary, as I said earlier, the idea that Larkin would be kind of popular in Brazil. But Larkin, I suppose, is quite he's a very sort of English character. And the idea that you're sort of, you're bringing these authors who already have quite a lot of fame to the country, as opposed to Lucy's kind of plucking these writers who are much less known to us and giving them a broader attention. Would you accept that?
I chose translating Larkin for many reasons. From my point of view, of course, Larkin is a very English poet. But from my point of view, he's a great craftsman, and I try to publicize English poets, because they may be options for new ones. For example, the English have always used rhetoric, for example, in a different way from us, and I think this may be very helpful.
But in a way, I think that it's to import technology.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I see. Maybe this is a kind of reinforcing the status quo, but also we work to bring dictions to the language. So I think it's.
Yes.
This is Marília Garcia, a very famous theorist, said that this is the political power of translators. In Brazil, we are not well paid, but at least we have a political power. And then it's possible, for example, to suggest titles, and this happens in Brazil.
Yeah.
Just one more thing, I think there is English and English, so maybe Caetano is talking about one kind of the major English literature, but we can translate. I don't know if Larkin is the case, but he translates L. Smith, maybe it's not the major, or there are many poets that are minor literature, so not forcibly we're doing it.
Yes. I mean, I was also thinking, that if a lot of the authors who get translated from Brazil, for example, are white bourgeois men, that would also be a way of reinforcing the status quo back here, that you're only translating a certain kind of person. But I don't think that's the case, is it, Lucy? Lots of different people are being translated in Brazil.
Yeah, well, there's a mixture. I think there has been sort of tendency to highlight the white middle class southern literature from Brazil. For example, the Granta Brazil issue that came out a few years ago was criticised for that very much. But one thing that I was really excited about seeing this issue of Wasafiri is how many women are in there being translated, which I think is really important. I think that's something we need to keep focusing on.
Yeah, great. Okay, moving on. Another set of provocations are raised in an interview with Marcelo Mirisola, who is one of Brazil's most vocal contemporary writers. His latest book, a book of short stories, is called The Impaled Christ, which perhaps sort of suggests his kind of provocative nature. He is amazingly negative about Brazilian literature. I couldn't believe in the interview he says that Brazilian literature is domesticated, a chaotic scene that finds itself paralysed. I mean, it was kind of extraordinary. He says at one point that he links this to sort of Brazilian life and Brazilian politics and refers to a piece of his own that he wrote about the Brazilian street demos in 2013, in which he wishes that the imponderable of Brazilian literature, this kind of imponderable nature of Brazilian literature, would be drawn into the flood of street activism. I mean, I think the point of what he's saying is that, this idea that Brazilian literature is paralysed. I know that you have read that interview, Marília. What did you think of that? He's so negative.
No, I think he's really negative. I don't agree with him. I see more chaotic scene with many lines of force, but I see what he's talking about because maybe he has this specific group I don't think there are poets. I think there are more from prose. They write novels and those are a group in evidence, and always those persons are on media and are invited to the fairs and international fairs, and people are always talking about these people. And also there are the major publishers that work with those people works. And also, we are talking the other day, there's this, I heard an expression in Brazil about, not only about literature, but also about the cinema and arts in general, that this would be the petroleum period, because the oil company, Petrobras, gives a lot of money for arts, so people produce for earning those scholarships and books. And so maybe he's talking about this, but I think the imponderable that he talks about is something good that will came, and I don't know, it's the text itself, it's the happening, I don't know, in the literature, and I think it's good. So.